Hi, friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Evolving Man podcast. It's episode 101. My name is Ben Goreski, and I'm your host. This episode is with a guest who's been on the show once before. His name's Jeddy Azuma, and he runs the Rising Man movement, the Rising Man podcast. And he came on back in 2019, just before the world went crazy, and we got to know each other there. And on this episode, we basically ended up this was kind of like a catch-up conversation that turned into like, hey, if you could speak to yourself back when you were 30, Jeddy's almost 40 now. He's a father of 2 kids. He's married. He just hit 10 years of marriage. And so we sort of looked back 10 years ago and said, hey, what are some of the things that you would say to your 30-year-old self? What are some of the things that you've learned over the past few years that have been super useful for you? And it was a really fruitful conversation. I enjoyed hearing his wisdom and seeing how he's grown since just the last time that we talked. And we talked about parenthood, the way that it's changed him, the way that he understands and sees his own parents, and how some of his own inner work combined with his practice of being a parent and meeting failure, meeting his own limitations, and learning some of these lessons that kids teach their parents has shifted the way that he listens to and understands and speaks to his parents. That was really cool. We definitely dove into Jeddy's spiritual outlook and some of the spiritual principles that he lives by. How that spiritual outlook has grown, and how he's learned to be strong and have perseverance, but not push too hard and not treat life like it's a sprint all the time, and to be flexible with his attachments, flexible with where he thinks he's going in his life, and to pay attention to the opportunities that are coming around him, and to listen to spirit, so to speak, and learn to work with that and respond to that. There's a lot of that kind of wisdom that comes through on this episode. Of course, we talk about brotherhood, the power of men's groups, and why Jeddy loves being a part of a men's community, and why he sits in circle with men who are older than him that can share wisdom with him, and how that helps him. And we also talk about nature connection and the importance of remembering our own deep nature and waking up our deep self by connecting to nature and rituals within nature, and how Jeddy's doing that with the Rising Man movement. So really impactful conversation. I love Jeddy. I love talking with him. He's always an inspiring guy. I always finish these conversations feeling fired up. So if any of that stuff appeals to you, strap in, get ready, and enjoy this episode with Jeddy Azuma. All right, I'm sitting with an old friend, Jeddy Azuma. Man, it's good to have you back on the show. Last time you were on, it was 2019, November 2019. A lot has happened since then, and we've kind of been tracking each other in the men's workspace, and guys who meet me also meet you. And so we hear about each other. We text each other every once in a while. And, I just thought it was time. It was time man, that's like 5 years ago. That was 5 years ago you came on.
Lifetime ago.
Man, let's talk. I want to hear about, what you've been up to, what you're passionate about these days. I had a friend last year who, he's been in my sphere, in my inner circle, and in my brotherhood for a while. And he was like, I'm going to go do this like initiation weekend with Jeddy. And he came back, he spoke so highly of it. He was like, that was amazing, man. And he's seen a lot of stuff. He's done a lot of stuff. So I respect his opinion, and I was like, yeah, another check mark in my mind for like what you're up to over on your side of things. So I there's a warm space in my heart for you. And when we first heard about you, we were like, Rising Man. My wife runs Rising Woman. Right. And we
Right.
were like, who started what first? And I was like, gotta check this guy out. And we went and looked and I just got in contact with you. And I was like, oh, this guy's a sweetie. He's got a huge heart and is doing good work with men, and it was nice to get to know you back on the show 5 years ago. So let's go, man. What are you doing these days? What have you been doing the last 5 years?
Oh man. Well, let's see. 2019. That was before everything went crazy in the world. So the last time we recorded, I had my daughter was still a newborn, more or less.
Yeah.
I have a 9-year-old son now and a 5-year-old daughter. So I'm doing that stage of life as a father, which that's one one avenue of conversation we could have, I suppose.
Yeah.
Celebrated 10 years of marriage with my wife this year, and I always talk about those two things first because to me, those are the most important things that I'm fighting for. I love all of the work that I do with men, but to me, that's really what it's all about. And so I like to think that I've been steadily endeavoring to be more of the man I say I am, and I think I feel pretty good about how I've done that. And I think that's really the most important thing at this stage of my life is just be who I say I am, because it makes things really simple. Mm-hmm. I've learned that in the last 5 years that if I just focus on that, it seems like everything else in life tends to work out.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. Okay. That's an interesting wisdom piece around where you're focusing your energy, how is that different from Jeddy 10 years ago or, maybe further back? I don't know. How old are you now?
37.
Yeah. So was 27-year-old Jeddy thinking that way or 20-year-old Jeddy thinking that way?
No, certainly not. I think there was the foundations of who I was always in there, but I'd say I've peeled back and discarded a lot of layers since then. 10 years is actually a really good window of time to look in because 10 years ago, like I mentioned, we had just gotten married. And 3 weeks before we got married, I went on my first solo wilderness fast. And I was deliberately marking that passage from solo bachelorhood, doing life by myself, for myself, and stepping into a whole new chapter. And so it was really nice to mark that for myself. And I'd say, reviewing the past 10 years, I've been learning how to be a partner and a husband because I didn't know what I was getting into. I thought I did. I knew I'd be a great father, but man, have I gotten served up some really humbling lessons about what it means to be a parent, like we all do, until once we're in those responsibilities. So yeah, man, I wasn't thinking that same way 10 years ago. How could I? I had no idea what I didn't know back then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you also said something interesting there, which was you've been getting rid of stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, I think when we're younger, we think of this idea of personal growth, we're gonna take on some new thing. We're gonna go learn how Tony Robbins is so awesome, or we're gonna learn this technique or that technique. We're gonna add it to who we are. But my understanding, my way of seeing how this is all sort of shaped out for me, because I'm 40 now, is I've actually just been getting rid of stuff as I've been doing the work, quote, as I've been doing my inner work. I've actually more so been getting rid of the things that I picked up along the way that were misguided or were dealing with shadow pieces or anger from my childhood or judgments and all kinds of extra stuff that I actually picked up along the way. I've been getting rid of those pieces. And particularly since I've entered fatherhood, there's been this, I've been doing this thing where I'm just trying to empty myself in a way. I'm trying to empty my expectations of how things should be. I'm trying to empty my agenda. You got to really let go of your agenda a lot of times when you've got a kid who doesn't want to get into a car seat or just a kid that has their own agenda and their own rhythms, that you get them all dressed up and you're about to go outside and then they poop, stuff like that, right? It is happening all the time. And I've had to also do that in a marriage, learning how to be in relationship, it's the more of my own stuff I bring to the table, the more complex it gets. And maybe this is like a masculine thing, but I just feel like that process of emptying and letting go of things that I no longer need, letting go of pieces of me that I no longer need, agendas, expectations, etc. The more clear and present I am, and just able to like be my best. And it's not that I become a nobody through that process. I actually become more my essential self, and like less of all of these like blocks that were around and on me throughout the years. And of course, there's still stuff there, but like that's sort of what came up when you talked about like emptying and letting go, or shaving off pieces of yourself. Does that
Mm.
resonate?
It sure does, and I don't think that process ever really ends. I have the great fortune and privilege of sitting in circles with a lot of guys who are much older than I am, who have heard me and who have watched me grow over the years. I know you and I both have been devoted to men's circles, and probably have relationships that go back decades now with certain men. And some of these guys, who I respect, who I admire and look up to, I ask them, like, does it ever stop? Do the curveballs ever stop coming? Will I ever get to a place where I get it? I figured it out. I cracked the code. I solved the puzzle. And they're like, no, there's just always another one around the corner. And I need to be reminded of that pretty often, less and less often these days. Cause now I know that that's just what I've come to find to be true about life. Is that there's always going to be something else. So that process of shedding layers and always transforming and evolving. I'd say the biggest thing that happened 10 years ago for me was starting to shift into being a man of service in my life. And I thought I knew what that meant. I thought I knew what that meant when I was 18. And then I thought I knew what it meant when I was 27. And now I think I'm just beginning to really understand how capable I can be as a man of service, the less that I have to hold for myself. And being a husband, being a father has taught me more than anything else in my life ever could about that. I'll pause there for a second.
Yeah. So what does that mean to like, to have to hold less for yourself so that you can be of service? Like, what are you letting go of? And like, what do you have to do to get to that place? Cause I think that transition for a lot of men is something that, we don't get a lot of guidance,
Sure.
We don't get a lot of guidance in our late 20s into our 30s about like how to really step into service. I think a lot of us, we play around a lot in our 20s, and like we're really out there adventuring the world, trying this, trying that. And I get the sense, especially with millennials, that like when we turn that corner around 30, somewhere between 30 and 35, we all kind of go like, oh, I want to like build something bigger in my life. I want to devote myself to something bigger. Like, what's my purpose? Like, guys actually get really, there's almost an anxiety that rises at that age. Like if they don't know what they're working on or what bigger thing they're building, and they want to figure that out, but there's not a lot of guidance, So, what is that? What are you letting go of so that you can be of service?
The way I think about it is creating more space. Because even something like, what's my purpose, and the excitement and the expansiveness of possibility when asking that question as a man in my teens, 20s, 30s, age is kind of irrelevant, but just beginning to venture into that possibility. At the beginning, I think it's very self-serving. It's like imagining what I could do, who I could be. And it excites me from a place of, oh, wow, if I become that person, what will my life be like then? What will I get to experience? How will people experience me? What will be my reputation, my relationship with other people? It's still very me-centric, even if it's based in doing something positive and service-oriented to the world. So what I'm talking about is shedding more and more of those insecurities that I have, or the need for validation, external validation especially, and replacing insecurity with confidence, because then it makes my personal requirements and needs a lot less. And realize that it's actually pretty simple for me. I don't require or need a lot to be happy or satisfied. And the more I can learn to let go of the things I thought I needed to be fulfilled, the more room I have to give back, give time and presence to my children, give time, presence, and love and romance to my wife. And I feel like I'm still just really discovering what that looks like,
Mm.
you know? But that's sometimes when I'm talking with guys, they'll see the video of this, right? I do this in my work. I talk about my territory. Like, this is my kingdom. This everything that lives inside of this circle here are the requirements I have to be the man that I say I am. It's my identity. It's the way that I define myself as a man. It's important to know what that is for every one of us. Because if I identify what that is, those requirements I have, those things that under no circumstances can I sell them out, otherwise I will lose who I say I am. Everything outside of those walls I become available for. So all those things that I maybe would have said no to, or where I would have prioritized myself, once I've gotten really clear on what I need to do to take care of this, I'm so much more available to everyone and everything else in my life outside of there. So that's really the discipline I've been practicing a lot in the last decade of my life, is figuring out what really lives inside of that kingdom for me that I need to tend to, that I take personal responsibility for, so that I can have greater and greater capacity to serve beyond those walls. And I think that's really what's in the heart of every man. I've interacted with thousands of guys over the years, just like I'm sure you have. And every single one of them, when you get down to it, they just want to do nice things for other people. We want to do positive things for the planet. And sure, we want to experience fulfillment as well, but I don't think it's as complicated as some men make it out to be. I wonder if you've started to see the same yourself.
For sure, especially when it comes to like purpose and things like this, and having a mission in the world. I think initially we all kind of expect that we're going to we have to do something like massive and transformational on a worldwide scale, especially the way that the world is now.
Yep.
And how we see influencers of all type out there. And that can be a daunting thing, you know? And this is why men's groups have been so important, because when guys are in that space of being like, it's got to be this, or it's got to be that, or I'm feeling this pressure to do this, or I'm also feeling my father's pressure, and I want to make this impact over here, but I'm not sure that that's my level of genius. And then you have guys reflect back to the man, like, hey, well, why don't we just tell you like what your value is here to us? And we're just going to tell you like what your essence is, and like the things we love most about you. And that guy gives a guy clarity on what he can bring to the world outside of that circle. You know, I've seen so many guys. This podcast and my Evolving Man brand is like directly influenced by my wife and my men's group telling me sort of where I need to go. They were like, hey, this is your direction. You need to go, man. And when I put the word out there to say like, okay, I'm a coach now, guys in my men's group were the first ones to sign up, because they were like, we want to just like have your back here. And there were guys that were like, I want coaching from you. Like, let's go, you know? And they were sort of the wind beneath my wings, you know? And it's, you know, for me, there's a podcast, there's a public facing piece around like connecting with guys out there who are moving and shaking like you and John Wineland and, you know, Trevor Boehm and Connor Beaton. But, you know, for all of us, it's really about like, okay, find your sphere of influence, find the people that you want to help that are close by, and focus there first. You know, you don't have to focus on like being a movie star or like impacting the entire planet. You know, like what about your start, you know, as Jordan Peterson says, like in your bedroom, make your bed, clean your room, you know, then clean your house, organize your own house and make sure that that is like working, and then focus on your close community, you know, manage your service there and your giving, and slowly expand your, circle of influence as your capacity grows.
Yeah, I'd like to speak to that for a moment, because I remember very vividly in my senior year of college, I was 21 years old, and my vision at that time was to open up a free medical clinic. I just wanted to give all the people who couldn't get good healthcare access to it. And I was on track to become a physical therapist. At that time, I was thinking about going and doing double majoring and going into medical school and doing that afterwards, simply because I just wanted to help people. And I had the privilege of doing some international travel and some social justice missions as part of a scholarship program I was in college, and it really opened my eyes up to the nature of the world beyond the bubble I'd lived in the New Jersey, New York metropolitan area. And I started to see just how much pain, how much hardship and challenge there is out there in the world. And because there weren't many people to help me understand what I was seeing, I took that really hard and heavy because I look back in hindsight, and I think this is where my masculine orientation towards service was really starting to come online. I was starting to feel more empowered. I was starting to feel like I could make more of an impact than I ever could before. And all of a sudden I was seeing some of the biggest atrocities in the world and feeling totally useless.
Right.
Like I can't make an impact on these people who are starving in Morocco.
Yeah.
How the hell am I supposed to help these migrant workers in South Korea? Right. I'm here for a day. What kind of impact can I make? And it's interesting because in the time since then, I mean, we're talking almost 2 decades, almost 20 years ago now for me. I've seen a lot of young men who experience that similarly for different reasons. They start to come into their power and know that they want to be of service to the world, but then they feel completely disempowered when they realize how big that mission actually is. And thankfully, by some combination of circumstances, mentorship, life experiences, I realized I don't need to be the one to save the world. I'm not here to put the world on my shoulders. I'm here to do what you referenced from Jordan Peterson, right? I'm here to take care of my side of the street. Like I can clean up my corner. And if I begin to master that, then maybe I can expand over to the other block. And my capacity to help and to be of service grows the more self-mastery I have first. And then just overall, as my skill set grows, right?
Yeah.
But this idea that it needs to be bigger than just that, if we had a whole generation of men who just did that, if we just took care of our own block, where would the world be? Right?
Yeah.
Like nobody needs to be this like, influencing a billion people. So, and I see a lot of men who are young men, especially, who are feeling a lot of pain because they don't know how to hold the weight of the world. And I think that's where the different generations of men in men's circles, men's groups, whatever you call it, is really important, is to put that into perspective.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, it's definitely a real wild ride, man. Turning, 20 and moving towards 25, let's say, just that zone when your brain is really starting to fill out in the prefrontal cortex and the neocortex, and you start to deal with bigger concepts. And yeah, you want to give back to the world, but at the same time, this thing is closing in of like how big and complex the world is. You start learning about politics, and you start learning about like the geopolitics, like how countries are jostling for power and all of the dynamics at play, the economy, and the just polarity of what it's like in different places in the world, and disenfranchised populations, and people who are just feeling that pain of like, wow, born in the wrong place at the wrong time, just born in a war zone versus like where I was born. Just the existential crises that come from feeling the weight of the world, like human reality and this human game. It's big. And I think that crushes a lot of people. Or at least sidelines their forward progress for a while in their lives, because like holding that is, it's a lot, man. It's a lot. And yeah, we have this kind of broken lineage in a lot of places where a 20-year-old doesn't really have the ear of a 40-year-old, a 50-year-old, a 60-year-old that isn't his father, or his mother. And the ability to like sit and just hold that with other people. Most of our contact at that age is with like a professor, or some guy who's teaching us carpentry, like whatever we're apprenticing in. But that wisdom piece, like those of us who get that, we're so lucky. We're so lucky,
Well, and also it's so interesting, right? I never had so much appreciation for my dad until I became a father myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I was started to look back and see, oh, wow, this is all the stuff that was going on that I had no idea was happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a pretty natural course for especially a lot of our generation to feel really disappointed with our parents and the parental experience that we got, especially the vast difference in growing up experiences from what they had and what we had with technology. And it's such a bummer because a lot of people shut down those relationships with their parents and miss out on all they actually could download from their parents because we don't know how to find a way to transcend some of those wounds and some of those hardships, and whether it's ancestral stuff or interpersonal stuff. But man, I've just really come to realize, man, there's still so much wisdom I haven't downloaded from my mom and my dad. And there was a big section of time where I just put some walls and barriers up because I needed to figure that out. And naturally, it's easier to go and source wisdom, have those deep, intimate bonds with, because being that close to people means you're going to get a mixed bag. Some of it's going to be great, some of it's going to hurt. And if there's enough of it that hurts, it can be easy to shut down those relationships at some point. So I also see a lot of guys who come in and we talk about mother wounds, father wounds. And I'm like, man, well, what if you could do the work to resolve some of those wounds and then source the wisdom? Because that right there would help restore some of the breaks in wisdom that you were talking about. Right. Or just doing that work alone, right? Simplify, right? Go heal with your mom, go heal with your dad. What can you source from there? Look within your own family unit. And I get it. It requires two parties. Parents have to be willing to do that type of healing work as well. But a lot of times I see people count people out too soon. You know, they give up too quick. And that's a greater theme.
Yeah. A lot of times, parents aren't willing to do that work. Like my parents weren't willing to do that work with them. Immovable objects. They were not down. And so my parents had to do their best in their own hearts to heal with their parents. And my parents are certainly more open than that, but I can only go so far with them. And when I talk with other guys in my men's group about where they're at with their dads and their moms, it's the same thing. You can only go so far with your mom or with your dad, because in a way, like, we're meant to go farther than them, metaphorically, we are meant to go farther than our parents. And yeah, I love what you were saying, about doing your own healing work around your parent, because that opens doors. Trevor Boehm just came on and shared about how the work that he did in men's circles prepared him for his father's death, so that he could be open and kind of empty, like we were talking about earlier, like just present and aware and able to hear, like listen, like what wanted to come through with his dad in a given moment, in these very precious, emotionally charged, anxious sometimes moments with family, everybody around having their own emotions, being able to be present in that and not lost in his judgments of his father, and able to just share his pain with his dad and like have clearing conversations, but for it to just be clean, because he had practiced that. He had done a lot of that work, and so I'm curious. Yeah. Like, if now that you've got a 5 and a 9-year-old, do you have less judgments of your parents compared to
many.
when you were 20?
Oh, so many, dude. I mean, that's just a factor of getting older and being a little bit open-minded. I still have plenty of judgments that I'll take responsibility for, but it's far less. And I feel proud of myself for replacing a lot of those judgments with genuine compassion and empathy, and understanding for everyone involved. I'm still learning so much about my inner family dynamics. I know there's a lot of really great resources available out there now to really dive deeply into it. But I don't know. I think it's kind of a bottomless pit, because we come from such a long line of ancestry, man, that I don't know if you ever get to the bottom of it. Like, that's it.
For sure.
I figured it out.
Sure. No.
Sorted out all of my family drama. Got it. Like, I don't think that ever stops. But yes, man, to simply answer your question, absolutely. I wouldn't respect myself if I didn't arrive at some greater level of compassion and empathy for my parents with less judgment than I did 10 years ago,
Yeah. 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 Me too. I have one kid, and thinking about my parents having 3 kids in their house, I'm like when we meet other parents with 3 kids or 2 kids, even, we're like, yo, how are you doing that?
Mm-hmm.
How are you doing that right now? Like,
Yeah.
this is really intense. How are you keeping your relationship together? Uh, you know, I now in a tiny percentage, because my parents had 3 boys. I got 1 girl. Like I feel like I feel a tiny bit of what my parents were feeling raising us.
Mm-hmm.
And they had less resources. They had less uh, ability to just like get questions. What should I do for my child? You just ask Google, like you can answer I can answer so many questions these days and just like find a solution and then order it off Amazon or build it in my kitchen, like
Right.
the things that
Well,
we can
it goes
do.
in both directions, though, man.
Yeah.
Like it's not apples to oranges. It's like apples to basketballs. I mean, our parents like talking about like mortgage rates and the ability to actually purchase a home, and
Yeah.
families being able to live off of one reasonable wage. I mean, there is plenty of challenge, and it was just different. I think that's
Yeah.
the thing I've really come down to is that it was just different. And there's things that worked about the way my parents raised us and did the marriage thing and did the raising kids thing. And even you said, this whole theme was going back 10 years ago or even 5 years ago. What's the same? What would be different?
Yeah.
I've always been a big fan and student of Bruce Lee. And even back then, if you ask me one of my favorite Bruce Lee quotes, he says that it's our responsibility to observe everything and then to take what's useful and then to discard the rest and what's left to make it uniquely our own. And I've applied that to everything in my life because it also it releases the need to judge any of it, just to decide that it's not useful for me. It's not useful for me in this context, in the circumstances of life that I'm living in. I decided it's not useful for me. It doesn't make it right, doesn't make it wrong. Just means that it's not right for me. And I decide that.
Yeah.
So yeah, man.
That's beautiful, man.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you create something new, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what he did.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He created something new because he picked what works there, he put it together, synthesized it, mastered it, and then brought that to the world, and it was like it's a game changer,
Well, and I don't think he was trying to change the martial arts world. I think he felt strongly about, I mean, who no one at that time thought that if you took the principles of boxing, fencing, and kung fu and put them together, that you'd have an elite, martial arts system. But now we have multi-billion-dollar industries built around mixed martial arts, and a lot of people view him as the godfather of that. So he wasn't. He's influenced billions of people, but was he trying to? I don't think so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's a ton of wisdom there, just in terms of like finding what works for you, finding what's not working, discarding that, not being too attached to dogma or particular schools of thought necessarily, and just taking what works. We're facing that right now with schooling. Like there's elements that we like of these different forest school, Waldorf, and we want to give our kid the best possible opportunity. But like whenever you're choosing a school for your kids, like you have limited options, and if you want to take a bunch of pieces and put them together, then you got to homeschool your kid, and then that's something new that you got to create, and that's something we might do. But I think that mindset is so valuable because you don't. It's so limiting to get stuck in one particular dogma just so that you can feel safe in a lane. Like you've got a structure to follow blindly.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're going to get more places, if you keep that open source mindset. Right.
Yeah. Well, and there's so many people who are afraid of quote unquote getting it wrong, right? Like, what if I choose poorly? What if I don't invest in Bitcoin? What if I don't send my kid to a Montessori school? Like all of these decisions that we have to make, and so concerned about getting things wrong. One of my favorite things to tell young people is that there's only 3 ways that you can really screw up as a young person, right? You go ahead and get a felony and have that on your record. That's number 1. Number
Yeah.
2 is you get somebody pregnant before you intend to. That's number 2. And the third one is die. Like those are literally the only 3 things you can do to negatively impact your future trajectory. You can come back from everything. You can make a lot of money. You can lose a lot of money. You can go travel the world, and then you can get lost and come back. And the ironic thing is, even on that list of 3 things, you can still come back from a felony. I have friends who've done that. You can come back from having a kid at a young age. I have family who have come back from that. You can't come back from death, at least, depending on who you talk to. But yeah, I say it a little bit tongue in cheek because so many people are afraid, even not just as adolescents or young people, but we're afraid of making the wrong decision. When I think we need to be more focused on listening to our instincts and making the best of what we can from whatever decisions we make.
Yeah.
And then moving on.
Yeah. Yeah. I do that. I coach a few young guys, and a lot of times that's the energy that I bring to them is like, yeah, what are you called towards? What are your fears about that? And, they're always holding the weight of like, oh, if I go this direction, then I can't go that direction. Or like, what if it does this and that, and a lot of the times the energy that I give them is like, dude, just go have fun. Just see yourself in a movie. It's an adventure. You're going to go, and there's going to be ups and downs. You're going to have challenges, and this stuff's going to break, and that stuff's going to get stolen. And, this is the wrong turn. So you're going to go that way. You have to backtrack. Like, that's part of it. Like, go. What you shouldn't do is nothing. Right? Like, move.
Yeah. Real talk.
Run, buddy. Go get out there and get some experience. That's what creates, that wisdom in a middle-aged man, which I think you're lucky to get if you do. So yeah. I would love to hear, like you said, solo wilderness fasting is something that shifted your trajectory in your life, and it's something that I know you do with guys. And I think it's an important topic because I really think nature connection, wilderness in general, is going to be in a way like a commodity or a growing pastime, or not a growing pastime. It's actually a shrinking pastime. And so it's actually something that people need more and more every day as we dive deeper and deeper into technology, as AI sort of starts to take over the world, as we become more digitized and the screens get closer and closer to our faces, our screen time increases, connection to nature and that special thing that occurs when we are like out there on a moving adventure or a standstill adventure, people are going to like pay more to go do those things. They're going to crave more of those things. They're going to need guides like you to take them on those journeys. And so I just want to dive into that a little bit and ask you about it and talk about this stuff, because more and more I'm having guys message me like, hey, will you take me to the jungle? Like, people need to get out of the city. They need to get out of their screen world. They need to get out of the work world and find themselves again. It's easier, more and more easy to lose yourself these days. So I know that wilderness and things like solo wilderness fasting and other types of nature connection are so powerful. So yeah, I would just love to hear about that from you.
Yeah. Oh, well, let me see if I can figure out where to begin, because I got a lot to say on the subject.
Yeah.
The first thing I think is most important is it's not enough for people to begin experiencing or re-experiencing nature again. It really needs to become a way of life, because it's wonderful that so many more people are creating relationship with plant medicines and going out and spending time in the wilderness. That's fantastic, but it needs to become a way of life. And the reason I say that is because it's just like a relationship, right? You can't have a very successful relationship if you hardly ever see or speak to your partner. If you spend time investing your attention into something that takes your attention completely away from your partner, the relationship's just not going to work. And the same is true for living on this planet. And that's not a bunch of woo-woo stuff. That's just like real talk. How could I possibly care enough about the place where I live and the future of the planet, literally our
Right.
home, if I don't have a relationship with it, right? And I'm not just talking about like watching Nat Geo or Planet Earth on Netflix.
Yeah.
I'm talking about actually going out and experiencing it, like putting your feet in the
Yeah.
mud, feeling afraid of nature, and realizing that nature is not an enemy but an ally. A lot of people think that. A lot of people are scared to go out and spend a night alone in the wilderness without a flashlight, and for all of our ancestors, right? Yours, mine, everybody who has, Homo sapiens DNA, we all have evidence of these traditions of spending solo time in the wilderness in order to demonstrate readiness for adulthood. It was ritualized. It was ceremonialized. It was a requirement. It wasn't an option. It wasn't like, oh, cool, I can go do this thing, maybe or not. It was like, no, you want to be an adult? You want us to trust you with the future of our people? Then you have to prove your readiness.
Right.
And I think there's something in every one of us that knows that, yeah, that's something I got to do. When I talk to guys about this, they're not aware of it, but instinctually they're like, oh my God, something about that feels right. Because it is. It's what our DNA knows for much, much, much longer than it knows AI and the internet. So that's one thing, man, is I think it's not even like an option. It's less about having the experiences. It's also about making it a way of life and practicing it when we return. We put in Rising Man. So our mission in Rising Man is to initiate an entire generation of men into purpose-driven leadership. That's what we're here to do. And we know that we're not going to initiate a whole generation. We did the math on it. It would take us like 1,000 lifetimes to do it ourselves. So, we've created a guide training process and a system for really perpetuating this way of living. But the thing we focused on is not just the experiences, but how we incorporate the experiences and guaranteeing lifelong incorporation support, because, hey, you're going to go out and you're going to experience a transformation. But just as well as I do, Ben, that if you go and do something transformational, but you don't have a place to practice it, it's gone. It evaporates, it fades, it goes away. So when I talk about, you say nature connection, and I talk about ceremonial rites of passage, I'm talking about remembering and reintegrating a whole way of being that a lot of us lost, but it's amazing how quickly we can remember when we make it a priority.
Yeah, this piece you were talking about, feeling a calling towards it, like it's not something that you want to do, but it feels like something that you have to do. I feel that way about hunting, for instance. Like when I hear people talk about hunting, it's not like maybe when I was younger, I was like, cool, like shooting stuff, like killing things. There's that younger part that's just like stoked to maybe wreak some mayhem on the world or something. But there's always been a deeper part of me that I don't want to have to kill anything. I don't, especially something with a beating heart. It's easier for me to snip a piece of lettuce off the ground, right? But to shoot an animal with a beating heart and watch it take its last breath because of me is like, it's always actually been something that's quite hard for me. And it's especially hard for me the older I get, the more I value life in general. But there's this part of me that feels like I have to do that. Like in order to be a more complete human, I need to participate in this practice. And I feel that same way about feeling connected to nature, like being out in the mountains or being out on the water in the ocean, like learning how to spearfish. Like last time we talked, I was living in the city. I was close to some parks and stuff. But since then, I've got my hunting license. I've got my spearfishing license. I've moved out of the city and live on like multiple acres of land that's connected to a nature preserve. I'm outside all the time. I make fire every day. I chop wood every day, and it's like, it's a dream life. That's what I want. I actually want to carry my own wood into the house and build a fire every morning and do all that stuff. Not because I like work, like it's harder, but I actually feel more filled up and connected by that practice, and there's something about, there's a real depth of connection and weightiness to eating a steak or a roast that is from an animal that you harvested, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, just speaking to that I think calling that all men have, and I'm sure all women have, you know, to connect with nature. And yeah, like you can go on a trip, you can go on a 5-day trip, you come back to the city and then not leave the city again or go to a park for the next year. But it certainly loses its effect. It becomes this like unreal thing in your life in a way,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whereas
Yeah.
like if you're able to like integrate that connection back into your life in the day to day, then it becomes kind of more real in a way.
Another thing I've learned, man, which is speaking to what you shared, congratulations, by the way, on creating that lifestyle for yourself and your family. That's beautiful, man. I admire that very much. I share a very similar vision and dream. Um, I I think we're going to see more and more people who choose to live their life this way. And I've learned for myself as as a kid who grew up in the suburbs of New York City, playing baseball and scraping my knees on cement, that there's a lot of distance to cover to go from that experience to hunting on my land that backs up against a wilderness preserve. You
Yeah.
know, and I feel fortunate that I feel like I've traveled and covered a lot of that distance. You know, even looking at my children as a reflection of how much distance I've covered, I see them as very different than I was as a child. Some ways similar, of course, because they're kids, but the things that they value, the things that they think are important, the direction that they want to go in their lives, I see that, okay, like I did that work to turn the wheel enough to send them in that direction. But I've also had to learn to really stretch my timeline. You know, I don't know what it took for you to create that experience for your family. I'm sure it took a lot of sacrifice and work from you, from your partner, some good fortune, right? And probably good karma too, because you're a good dude, I can tell. and everybody has like some unique combination of those variables in their lives. Some people are overcoming much more challenging circumstances than you or I to try and get that far. And maybe they won't be able to carry in their own wood in this lifetime like you will. But if they do their work and they think that that's important enough, then maybe their grandchild will. Right. And I've learned that, you know, I'm only going to go so far in my life. And that goes back to the "it's not about me" thread that we were talking about. Because I realized that a lot of the vision I had for raising my children on land, just like the way that you described, was still about me. I wanted to see that, because to me, that would suggest that I succeeded as a man, as a husband, as a father, as a leader of my community, that to raise my children from a young age on a piece of land that became their home, that was my mark of success. But it was still so much about me. And part of this, like stretching my timeline and learning that, hey, it's actually not all up to me either. I've got a partner to consider. I've got the world to consider. There's a creator of mine up there who's directing some of this too. So why am I so concerned with getting this done so quickly? You know, if it's really about the big picture and just my small role that I play in that. So I think that's another thing too, man. Just dropping these wisdom nuggets that I've collected in my life of like, man, and it makes my life a lot more simple and a little bit less stressful. Because I used to treat every year like the most important year of my life. I got to make all the money. I got to make it happen right now. If I don't make it happen now, that's it. Game over. Depression.
Yeah.
No. It's like, let's just keep going. This is a marathon. This isn't like several 100-meter races.
Yeah. I love that, dude. That's I very much resonate with it. When I was in my 20s, for sure, I just had so much energy. And I was like bulldozing people around me. I can still be a bulldozer, but like I have a reputation, you know, like when I see people who knew me in my 20s, when I see them now, they're like, who are you, dude? Like you're chill. You're chilled out, you know. There's this chilling that occurs, I think, as you age. I think if you're aging properly, you know, where
it's not guaranteed. So congratulations on that too.
Where you can gain some perspective on things and you just kind of drop your agenda a little bit. Like, yeah, it's good to set goals. It's good to like perform your best and do your best in your life. Yes. But like, you can't control everything. Not everything comes at your pace. And holding so tightly, inevitably you are going to have a heart attack or get cancer from that kind of attitude. You know, when you grip something so tight for so long, every once in a while, you got to have a death grip on something like for a short period of time. But for the most part, it's much better to be kind of loose and flexible, yet strong. You know, I'm sort of learning some of those lessons from Qigong and you know, Bruce Lee around like be powerful yet flexible and nimble. You know, and we've got to be that way in our minds. We got to learn how to be that way in our minds.
Sure. Yeah, because we can also miss a better opportunity that might come, right? If I've got my head in the weeds and I'm gripping on so tightly to what's right in front of me because whatever reason, whatever attachment I have to that outcome, there could be an amazing opportunity that walks right behind me, right? I'm sure there's memes. I'm sure there's like parables from all different wisdom traditions out there, but that's just human experience. If I'm looking here and I'm turning off my peripheral awareness to everything around me, I could be missing out on something else, you know? And oh man, I can't tell you how many times that's happened to me. And then you look back in hindsight, you're like, oh man, why was I holding on so tightly for? Why? That's another one too, man. If we're talking about, I don't know, here's just what's coming through is all these like things I've learned in my life up till now. And the way that I have held on so tightly to some things in my life, and for what? That I am the one who, for the most part, especially the past 5 years of my life, have created my own timelines. I'm in charge of how and when and where I spend my energy. Like that, these are the things I actually do have control over, and yet the outcome, the results of all of that was a lot of stress, a lot of hardship, a lot of negative self-talk. Still, despite all this men's work that I've done, still feeling very, very critical of myself, and realizing that, man, I've been choosing all of this all along. Whoa. Why am I dialing up the stress? Why am I ramping up the heat? It's important. Still, I love that energy, but doing it recklessly or without precision and intention is harmful. And I'm just not that interested in it anymore, man. Maybe I'm getting old, bro. You tell me. Your 40's right around the corner for me. Maybe this is just what happens, but that's what I'm learning, man.
Yeah, I think the more occurrences you have where you kind of run into a wall with your agenda and you're maybe fighting a fight with your partner or with your kids or with some external force outside of your home because of your idea of what success means in this instance or some goal you have, eventually you have to give up anyways with a lot of these things. It's like you just got to let go. You got to change course, you know? Eventually, I feel like if you're listening, you learn that you could do that earlier. Like you could drop a lot of that agenda and expectation way, way earlier. And yeah, bring a level of flexibility, you know? And I've noticed that, you know, as I moved into a serious relationship, got married, you know, we had our challenges there around, you know, like we'd go travel the world and figure out how to do that well together, how to be a good team together. And then we added we added a dog first, and then, you know, figuring out how to travel with the three of us, and then adding a child, you know, it's kind of like 2.5x a dog or something in terms of the workload, you know.
Wait till you have two.
Oh man, I've heard it's got triples if you have two, you know.
That's it.
But like just learning to be like, oh, okay, we'll cancel the flight. We'll pay the penalty. Okay, we'll cancel the Airbnb, or we'll shave a day off and we'll go home early. Or like we'll go there because, we got to go there. You know, things have changed. We got to just let go, move on, go to that place instead, or go home early. Like that kind of being able to just sort of shift course because the weather changed is something that I used to do with great struggle in my 20s. I would fight and people around me would want to run, you know, and I would alienate myself, you know, in this process of like having to come to terms with life being life. You know, they say in AA or 12 steps, you got to learn to live life on life's terms. Addicts need to learn to live life on life's terms because they've been trying to live life on their terms for a long time, you know, like,
Mm.
and when you get sober, you can't run anymore. You just have to accept life as it comes at you, you know, and the
Mm.
pile of wreckage behind you usually. And so, for sure, the depth of that uh, phrase, learn to live life's terms,
Mm.
has really hit home for me over the last 10 years. So I love that you shared that. Yeah.
Well, and I think there's always these polarities and wisdoms, right? Like what I interpret from that, living life on life's terms, is learn to accept what I can't control, and to also understand what I can't control. Because I used to think that I could control other people's emotions. I could make people like me if I do certain things, or I could make people not be upset with me if I, manipulate the situation, right? So understanding what I can't control, but also recognizing where I do have control, which is pretty much just over myself, my words, and my actions. And that goes back to that, kingdom analogy. Like what are the terms I have for my own life that I do have control over, that I can be masterful of, and under no circumstances sell those things out, because that's what makes me who I say I am. And just get really good at this part. If I get really good at this part, I can do anything else. I can surrender to the rest of the ocean of the world and the uncertainties and the unknowns, as long as I'm taking care of this.
Mm-hmm.
And there's going to be hardships, and there's going to be overwhelm, there's going to be challenges. That's a constant. That's a guarantee.
Yeah.
But I'm much more capable to ride those out as long as I never sell this part out.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, man, like always the balance of these things too, right? Like, I grew up and discipline was really important for me. And then I realized, wow, there's this really dark, shadowy aspect of discipline for me that leads me to be very self-critical. So what's the balance to that, right? What balance is really strong, rigorous self-discipline? Oh, self-compassion, self-acceptance, recognition of my limitations. Oh, okay, great. Let me throw that in my tool bag too. Now I know I have two tools available and I can decide which one's appropriate. I need to be more disciplined right now, or I need to be gentle with myself. We just had another kid and I'm providing for a family of 4. Okay, a little bit of compassion on top of that.
Yep.
And the discernment to know which one is the most relevant. That's the mastery. That's
strength and flexibility. Yeah, together, strength and flexibility. Better together than separate. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, we got 10 minutes left. So here's the main thing that I want to understand about, like, I really want to get clear on like the work that you're doing in the world and how people interface with you. Like when people find you, they find your work, how do they enter in, like, and what's the typical path for guys to like get into your sphere of influence, and what do they end up doing? Like, what does a guy's journey look like? If he listens to Jeddy on this podcast and is like, that's my guy, man. This guy's like, I want to sit beside that man around a fire and hear his wisdom. Like, what happens?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of different entry points, man. I'd say that for guys who recognize that they're tired of doing it alone, and they value having other men in their life that they can count on, we've got a 7-month onboarding system for guys to join the Rising Man community, to be set up to identify their own foundations, and then to be an integrated member of what we call a fire circle team. And we've learned a lot over the years. We realized that guys really need that education and time to integrate this, that it's, even though it's instinctual and it's implicit to do this, to sit down with other men, we do need that experience and guidance. And we also include our 3-day immersion, which maybe that's the one that your friend was telling you about, called the Rising Man Weekend. And to us, that's the ultimate, like, here's what being a Rising Man's all about and how to do it on a team and get the most out of this. So I direct a lot of guys to that space, because most guys are really just looking for team and brotherhood, and they want to be able to see the things that they can't see and have a safe place to take off their mask. That's what that's all about. I'm grateful that we've kind of built out that community in a way that I'm working also with high level leaders and CEOs, and same problems, man, but just in a different scale and capacity, working with guys and how they navigate like family relationship dynamics, but especially like team dynamics if they're running companies, So I spend a lot more of my time working directly with those guys these days, but still very much involved in the Rising Man community. I still take guys out to fast every year, but now we have a team of guides, so I'm not always the one going out and leading these fasts. And that was the vision all along. I never wanted to be the center of it all, just the one who started the fire.
Yeah, man, you can't do it all anyways. The 3-day Rising Man weekend, is that a fast or is that separate? Is the fast separate?
No, it's not a fast. No, the fast is actually a whole 5-month process. And then we spend 8 days out in the wilderness. 4 of those days you spend alone without food.
Right.
That's called Compass. But no, the 3-day immersion is our Rising Man weekend. That's like our introduction to the community and the in-person work.
So a guy comes in and he does these like maybe weekly calls or something, that bi-weekly calls for 6 months or something like that. And then he goes to the weekend.
Yep.
Okay. And then he becomes a part of a team, a fire circle team.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. Cool, dude. That's a cool way that you do it. You know, like you don't just like jump in and you're just like in. You like need to come in and go through a process, an initiation process, learn the language, learn the tools, like learn how we do things here, like do this sort of like base level inner work that we want all the men here to have done, do the preparation work for this weekend that we're going to have. That's going to blow your mind. And then as you come out of that weekend, you then join a squad. I know that Mankind does it that way. You kind of like need to go to the warrior initiation. What's it called? The warrior initiation weekend?
Warrior weekend.
New warrior training. Yeah. You got to do that before you like join a team, basically. And so you all have that experience in common. Yeah.
I think it's important, man, especially when we're sharing an identity as a community. You know, I was talking to a guy last week who's a men's coach, and we were talking about community. And I said, you know, if there's a guy out there who wants to create a program to help men with something specific in their lives, it can be 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, 1 year, whatever. But if you're trying to build community, it's completely different. You gotta really think deeply about the culture that you want to create. You got to practice living your own life that way, and enrolling other people at a core to live their lives that way, because that's the only way that you actually have an organization or a community. Otherwise, it's just a set of, you know, this, it's like a recipe that you can add to your cookbook or not. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with guys who are coaches who just offer, you know, programs, but community organization, you know, rediscovering and reinventing the village is actually focusing on these deeper cultural elements and practices. And that's the long game too. You don't do that in 8 weeks.
No.
So
it's so
different
complex.
Topic.
Yeah. But I feel you, dude. Cause like the last time we talked, I was a captain in what was then called the Samurai Brotherhood. And, in the meantime, I think I had just created the first Ronin squad, which is like an online squad. The Samurai Brotherhood was primarily in person, right? And we were sort of 6 months in or something like that to having the Ronin squads. And then COVID happened and we started a squad every month for like 10 months. And we ended up with 15 or 16 of them. And then I became the division commander there for Ronin division, and the Brotherhood kept growing, and in-person shrunk a little through COVID, and online grew, and now everything's sort of back to growth. And the founder of the organization has entrusted myself and one other guy to be co-directors of the organization. And so I'm now involved with this thing that I didn't create, but am focused on growing and also caring for, you know, like holding it and keeping it together, and, you know, making sure that internally we have our own just healthy dynamic going on, and that we are fit to grow, you know. And I just want to say, man, good for you. Good. Like, this is amazing that you created an organization, a community where that's thriving, that's growing, and that has that backbone, that structure. Like I'm creating things in Arca, but like I didn't create it. It took a special kind of wisdom and gusto and like forward movement from my mentor, PT Mistelberger, to start the thing and to like really breathe life into it. So I admire that, man. It's really nice to hear. I mean, this is different from the last time we talked. Like you really got something going here.
Well, thank you, man. I really appreciate that. And who knows, maybe in a future conversation, we can talk shop a little bit more because
Yeah.
there's been so much I've learned along the way. But um, I, I've identified where my limitations are and what my role actually was. I'm a fire starter,
Right.
and I'm really good at starting fires, and I can tend to fire, but it's not really my role. There's got to be other fire tenders and keepers, and there's no role that's more valuable or more prestigious than the other. We're just doing what we're supposed to do.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that, man. I receive that. It's fun to go down memory lane a little bit and think about where I was when we were planning the Vancouver Haka event, the Call of the Warrior event up there, which I still would love to do someday. But man, oh man.
For sure, I would love to do that. Like, just for context for people listening, like Jeddy and I were talking about, I had to cancel 3 events that year when COVID happened because I had some shit planned, man. We were going to do a Loon Lake weekend, and there was something else. And then we had this Haka a training, where Jeddy was going to come to Vancouver with what was Leon Ruri.
Yep.
And his buddy.
Yep.
And they were going to teach us, a group of guys, how to do the haka properly. And for me, I was like, oh man, like that would just be an honor. Like just such an honor. And of course, like everything shut down. We were going to do it in May of 2020 and everything shut down. So we had to cancel it. But I would love to do that again. I looked up Leon recently and just sent him an email and just said, hey, like, are you still using this email? Like, I would love to chat more about this. I didn't get a response from him, but for sure, let's put that on the map. Maybe we can meet up and do something together someday. That'd be wicked, man.
Yeah. Well, let's, I'll send a seed for the future, like kind of like vision cast into the future. I'm sure you've seen the movie Black Panther, right?
Yeah.
So there's that. And this is such a, guy thing, but that moment where the different tribes gather together, and like, he's kind of being ordained as the new Black Panther. And that you can see that each of these like collections of people have their own identity, but you can also tell that there's something that they all share. That's what I really want to see from these different men's collectives and organizations, is coming together that way and sharing, swapping wisdom and information. I think this first wave of the men's movement in the tech world had a lot of competitiveness in it. And I'll admit, like, I got swept up in that too. Just the natural, like, I really believe in the rising man way. How do I get this out into the forefront more? And of course it's all about collaboration and allyship, but there's a lot of like competitiveness rooted underneath it. And I think that just the course of time and circumstances filtering out a lot of that now. So I look forward to more of these moments where we collaborate in these bigger ways as organizations of men, because we truly are. No one's in this to get rich, man. No one's doing this to get rich. Truly, man. Like we could lay out the books and show everybody this isn't like a get rich thing. It's a labor of love and service, and I think we all want the same outcome at the end of the day. And we can really do some incredible things when we join arms. So man, I look forward to whatever that looks like, however that unfolds. I'm here for it.
Yeah, I love it, man. I love that. I feel like there's an immature competition that can occur, or a shadowy competition for sure. There's lots of that in the world. Like you got to crush the other guy or whatever. There's only so much to go around. This sort of like, lacking scarcity mindset, and then there's an abundance mindset with competition. That's just fun. It's just fun to participate in, in ARCA. Every once in a while, we get a whole bunch of the squads together, the small groups that we have. We get a whole bunch of them together and we compete for a day in something called the Wolverine. Tug of war, sprinting, fireman carry, grab the towel, like sumo wrestling, like just fun shit. Nice. And we start and we do like squad chants where you get points for like the coolest chant and stuff like this. And then at the end, we all breathe together. And we select the winner, and then we have a barbecue, and it's just great, man. The competition is fierce, but like we're not taking it that seriously. We're just loving that energy, just that spirit of competition with love and with admiration for the other team. Like it's just the right kind of sportsmanship, and I see that between our organization and you guys and Sacred Sons and Connor's work and every man. And Oh man, there was one last thing that I was going to say, but um, point is yes to everything that you shared there. So
Yeah.
great, man. Glad to touch in with you and see what you've built, and let's keep it going. Let's keep the conversation going. Let's keep the collaboration going. Keep lifting each other up, because we have collectively a mission that is much larger than any of us can fulfill. Right. So let's go. Let's lock arms and
man.
keep moving forward.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on again, Ben. It's always good to connect with you, bro, and give my best to your lovely wife, and congrats on the budding family, man. It's really wonderful to see how your journey keeps unfolding.
Thank you, brother. And we'll see you when we're in Austin.